I was ready to give everything for this family, until I found something she never meant for me to see. We had been trying for over a year. Ovulation EPS, vitamins, early morning tests, nothing. But then, one morning, she came out of the bathroom shaking, holding a stick with 2 faint pink lines. She was pregnant. We were finally going to be parents. I cried. She cried. We hugged in the hallway for what felt like hours. That day, I ordered a crib. The next week, I painted the nursery pale yellow. I started writing letters to the baby, one for every month leading up to the birth. We had been married 5 years, and I'd never loved her more than I did in that moment. When the time came, the labor was long but safe. A healthy baby boy, 7 pounds, perfect little scream. I held him in my arms, and I swear, my whole world stopped spinning. But then came the doctor. He was calm, but cautious. He asked to speak to me in private. I didn't understand. I followed him to a small room down the hall. He closed the door behind us. And then he said the words I still hear every time I try to fall asleep. Your blood type is O negative. Your wife's is A positive. But the baby's is AB. Medically speaking, it's not possible for you to be the biological father. I stared at him, frozen, like my body had stopped receiving oxygen. I thought it was a mistake, a hospital mix-up, a typo. I laughed. A broken, confused sound. That's not possible, I told him. We've been together since college. I've never. But even as I spoke, something inside me shifted, something I couldn't explain. A crack, small, but spreading fast. I went back to the room, held my son again, kissed my wife's forehead, and told her, "You did amazing. He's perfect." But inside something had died. I didn't sleep that first night in the hospital. She was passed out in the bed, our newborn wrapped in her arms. And me? I sat in the corner chair, staring at the ceiling, wondering who the hell I just built a life with. I told myself it had to be a mistake. Hospitals aren't perfect. Blood types get misread. But every time I looked at my son, my beautiful, innocent, wide-eyed son, I saw a face that wasn't mine, a chin that didn't match, eyes shaped differently, and worst of all, I saw nothing of her in him either. For weeks I kept pretending. I changed diapers. I rocked him to sleep. I took photos of them together and posted them online with captions like, "My whole world." But every time I hit post, I felt like I was lying to the entire planet. And to myself. I started watching her. Closely. Carefully. She smiled at me the same. Told me she loved me the same. But now, every word she said felt rehearsed. 2 months later I found it. She was in the shower. I was cleaning the bedroom when I knocked over her jewelry box. Little earrings scattered everywhere. I bent down to pick them up, and that's when I saw it. A small SIM card tucked under the tray. Hidden. Not labeled. My hands started shaking. My stomach turned. I knew what I was holding before I even plugged it into my spare phone. And what loaded onto the screen. It wasn't just a few messages. It was a secret archive. Hundreds of deleted texts, photos, voice notes, videos, and all of them were with him. Not an ex, not a stranger, our neighbor, the quiet, helpful guy next door, the one who once helped me fix our fence, the one I lent money to when he lost his job during lockdown, the one who we invited to dinner so he wouldn't feel alone during the holidays. He wasn't just a neighbor, he was part of our life, and he was the father of my wife's baby. But it wasn't over yet, because the deeper I scrolled, the darker it got. There were messages that didn't just prove betrayal. They revealed something else, something calculated, something planned. I opened one message, and it stopped my heart. He still has no idea. This makes us even. Even for what? That message wouldn't leave my head. This makes us even. Even for what? What the hell did she mean by that? I went through every thread, every text between her and the neighbor, looking for context. And then, I found it. One conversation, dated nearly a year before she got pregnant. A screenshot of a message she had sent him. It's funny. He thinks I never found out. But I did. And I made a promise to myself that day. I'd take something from him he'd never recover from. Couldn't breathe. I sat on the edge of the bed, the phone in my hand, feeling like I was choking on my own memories. What was she talking about? What did she find out? And then it hit me. Hard. Cold. There was only one thing it could be. 7 years ago. Before we got engaged. Before we bought the house. I had a one-night stand. It was stupid. Fast. Meaningless. We were technically on a break. A few months where we didn't talk after a huge fight. I never told her. 'Cause I thought it didn't matter anymore. But she found out. Somehow, someway she knew. And instead of confronting me, instead of talking about it, she buried it, let it rot, and decided to rot with it. She married me. She planned a future. She smiled in every photo. But underneath all of it, she was waiting for her moment, for the perfect opportunity to make me feel what she felt. And now I realized, getting pregnant wasn't an accident. It was the plan. I put the phone down, looked at the crib in the corner of the room. Our son was sleeping peacefully, innocent, beautiful, mine, and not mine. I didn't feel rage, not anymore, just silence, and a thought. If she was capable of planning all this, what else was she hiding? So I made a decision.
No confrontation. No screaming.
No, why did you do this to me? Not yet. I was gonna play her game. Smile. Pretend. Act like I knew nothing. Because if she wanted revenge, she hadn't seen what mine looked like yet. The next morning, she kissed me on the cheek and asked if I wanted pancakes. I said yes. Told her I loved her. Even pulled her in for a hug she didn't deserve. She smiled. God. She smiled like she was proud of the lie. And I played my role like it was a movie I never auditioned for. Because now I wasn't just her husband. I was her shadow. And I was going to watch her burn, quietly. I made copies of the SIM card. One on a secure drive. One hidden at work. One uploaded to a cloud folder titled, Baby Truth. Then I started taking notes. I paid attention to everything. What time she left the house. Who she texted before bed. When she smiled at the baby. When she didn't. She was still messaging the neighbor. Not often. Just enough to remind me she hadn't really let go. One night, I pretended to be asleep. I heard her walk into the nursery around 1:40 a.m. She whispered to the baby. I couldn't hear everything, but I caught one line. You're so lucky. You have 2 daddies who love you. My heart dropped. Not you have a daddy who loves you, too. Like it was okay. Like this was just another version of love. I sat up in the dark for the rest of the night. And in that silence I accepted something. This wasn't a mistake she regretted. This was her twisted idea of justice. The next day I called a lawyer. I didn't file for divorce. Not yet. I asked quiet questions. What happens if I'm not the biological father? But I signed the birth certificate. Can I petition for custody? If I have proof of paternity fraud, does it change things? She told me it was complicated, but not impossible, especially if I had evidence. Oh, I had evidence. Then came the second storm. I was going through our shared iPad. She didn't log out of her iMessage account. She never thought I'd check. But I did. And what I found wasn't just betrayal. It was pride. A text thread to a close friend of hers. Someone who came to our baby shower, hugged me, smiled in my face. He still has no clue. It's kind of empowering, honestly. After what he did before we got married. I deserve this. Her friend replied, you played it perfectly. Now make sure he stays on the hook for child support. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I took a photo of the screen, backed it up, labeled the image file, control, because that's what this was for her. Not love, not healing, control. That night I rocked our son to sleep. I looked down at him and whispered, I don't know what you'll grow up to be, but I promise you won't grow up in a house built on lies. And right then, I knew what I had to do.
No courtroom.
No fight, just vanish. We hosted dinner that night. She invited a couple of friends over. The same ones who told her she deserved better behind my back. The same ones who smiled at me like I was clueless. Like I didn't know what they really thought of me. She made her signature pasta, poured wine, laughed at every joke that wasn't funny. I sat there, nodding, smiling, playing the doting husband, because I needed her to keep believing I was broken. Oblivious, soft, but I wasn't. I was calculating. That morning, I'd visited a second attorney. One that specialized in covert custody removals, discreet exits, no drama, just strategy. She asked for proof. I gave her 3 folders, one full of texts, one with the hospital's genetic blood report, and one labeled motive, the messages about revenge. She read in silence, then looked up at me and said, "If you want to disappear, I can help you do it legally and permanently." I said one word, "When?" Back at the house, I began clearing digital traces, opened new bank accounts, transferred just enough money to avoid suspicion, created a new email address, downloaded a secure parenting app and added all of my son's medical records. I even found a place, a quiet rental 2 states away, fully furnished, no questions asked. She had no idea. She still kissed me goodnight like she owned me. She still texted her friend things like, "He's so calm. I think I actually broke him for good." I screenshotted that too, labeled it, "Final insult." A few nights later, she got wine drunk on the couch, laid her head in my lap and asked, "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" I looked down at her, the same face that once made me believe in forever, the same voice that used to calm my storms. Now, all I saw was a performance. She wasn't reminiscing. She was rewriting, trying to convince herself this lie she built was still a marriage. And I just whispered, every day. What she didn't know was that I had bought 2 plane tickets, one for me, one for my son. What she didn't know was that I had packed a go bag in the garage: diapers, formula, clothes, a burner phone. What she didn't know was that I had already printed the documents: emergency custody claim, legal notice of separation, DNA test results, and a USB drive, labeled truth. I was almost ready. Just one more thing left to do: disappear. 3 weeks. That's how long I smiled in silence while everything around me decayed. She kept texting her friends about how good things were finally getting, said I was back to being sweet, calm, present again. They sent hearts. One even said, "Maybe he'll never find out." I almost laughed, because every time she kissed me, I tasted the lie. And every time she put our son in my arms, she gave me the very thing I was going to take from her. I stopped going into the office, told her I was working remotely, but really I was meeting with lawyers, locking down custody routes, finding schools in a town she'd never think to look. I sold my car, quietly, told her it broke down and wasn't worth fixing, transferred the funds to a new bank under a business name she'd never heard of, paid 6 months in advance on a new place, 3 states away. Every night, I held my son longer than usual, let him fall asleep on my chest, memorized the weight of him, the smell of his hair, the little sounds he made in his sleep, because the next time she'd reach for him in the dark, he wouldn't be there. I prepared the package slowly. 1 USB stick, labeled, "You always wanted control. Now you have it. Alone." Inside, hospital records confirming the paternity issue. Screenshots of every message to the neighbor. Screenshots of the revenge messages to her friend. Voice memos I'd recorded of her talking in her sleep, calling him by name. A letter, not for her, for our son. "If you ever read this one day, I want you to know I didn't leave you. I left her, because love doesn't grow where it's poisoned. And I wasn't going to let you be raised in a house full of secrets." The final week, she suggested we take a family photo. She wore white, put the baby in a tiny bow tie, made me wear a shirt she used to call her favorite. She set the self-timer on her phone, then ran to me, kissed my cheek as the flash went off. That photo is still hanging in our hallway, a final masterpiece of fiction. The night before I left, she fell asleep on the couch. TV still playing. Wine glass half full. I stared at her for a long time. She looked peaceful. Safe. Like she'd never burned down the man sitting 5 feet from her. I walked into the nursery, picked up my son. He didn't even stir. Carried him to the garage where everything was ready.
Bait picked.
Keys in the ignition. I buckled him in, kissed his forehead, and whispered, "You'll never grow up thinking this is what love looks like." Back inside, I placed the USB stick on the kitchen counter. Next to it, a folded note. "You destroyed my life. I just returned the favor. I didn't slam the door. I didn't leave a mess. I didn't make a sound. I just drove away. And for the first time in years, I felt free." She didn't notice anything at first. The house was still. The morning light poured through the kitchen window just like always. Her wine glass was still on the coffee table. But there was no baby cry. No bottle in the warmer. No sound of me brewing coffee or humming while I rocked him. She rubbed her eyes, checked the time, smiled, probably thinking she got a rare sleep in. Then she called out, "Babe? You up?" No answer. Again, louder. "Ethan?" She walked upstairs.
Nursery door cracked open.
The crib, empty.
No bag. No blanket. No diapers.
She checked the bedroom, my side of the closet, wiped clean, laptop gone. Then she saw it. On the kitchen counter, a small USB stick. And next to it, a folded note. I imagine she stared at it for a while. Heart pounding, mind racing, realizing this wasn't a joke. I imagine her hands shaking as she opened it. "You destroyed my life. I just returned the favor." She collapsed. Not literally, but inside, I know something cracked. Because everything she thought she was in control of was gone. She called my phone. Straight to voicemail. She texted, "Where are you? What are you doing? Ethan, come back. You can't just take him. Please." I didn't answer. I never would. Later that afternoon, she plugged in the USB. And that's when the truth became undeniable. Every file was named with a date. Every folder organized by month. Every screenshot backed up twice. She clicked through the texts. Her own words, laughing at me. Planning the payback. Mocking the man she swore she loved. There was no spin she could apply. No story she could craft. It wasn't cheating. It was premeditated emotional assassination. Then she found the video. The one I recorded the night I left. Me standing in the nursery, holding our son. If you're watching this, it means I'm already gone. You made your choice years ago, and you waited for the perfect moment to get even. But you didn't just punish me. You built a lie, lived inside it, and dragged an innocent child into it. I looked down at our son. He didn't ask for this. He didn't deserve to be born into a war you started over a mistake I made before we even said, "I do." You didn't fix anything. You broke everything. And I won't let him grow up thinking that kind of love is normal. She watched it, and from what her friend told me later, she screamed, not in anger, but in a sound that only comes from realizing. You played the game, and still lost. She called my mother, my sister, even the lawyer I'd used once years ago. No one told her where I went, because no one knew, not even them, and I kept watching, from afar. New town, new name on the mailbox, new bedtime routine. My son giggles now. He calls me Dada, and hugs me like I'm his entire world, because I am. Meanwhile, she's posting vague quotes about heartbreak, trying to repaint herself as the victim. But those who know the truth, they're quiet, because silence is louder when you're guilty. And when the child she built for vengeance disappears from her life forever, that's not just karma, that's justice. 2 months passed. No contact, no sound, no legal motion, just silence. I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd accept the truth, take her loss and vanish like I did. But I should have known better, because people like her, they don't grieve what they lost. They hunt it. The first sign came in the form of a voicemail. Blocked number. Distorted voice. But I knew who it was the moment I heard the trembling breath before the first word. "I just want to talk. You can't do this, Ethan." He's mine too. Please, I'm not the monster you think I am. Click. No apology. No ownership. Just you can't do this. Classic. Then came the envelope. No return address. No name. Just a photo. My son and I, at the park. On the swing set. A moment I thought was private. There was a message on the back. If I can find you, a judge can too. I didn't panic. Not outwardly. But my hands shook for 20 minutes. She had eyes on me, which meant she was closer than I thought. I called my lawyer. She was already ahead of it. She filed an emergency petition in your home state. Claims you kidnapped her son. She's trying to play the abandoned mother card. I asked, does she have a case? The lawyer hesitated, then said, not if what's on that USB is real. But you need to show up. And you need to stay calm. Calm. The woman who spent 2 years setting me up for the perfect betrayal was now painting herself as the heartbroken mother. And the system? It doesn't care about pain. Only proof. So I started building again. This time not to escape, but to defend. I pulled records, copies, timestamps, doctor visits, receipts. Everything to prove that while she was busy getting revenge, I was the only one actually being a parent. Then came the final straw. She showed up. In my town. At my grocery store. We locked eyes from across the parking lot. And for the first time, she looked small. Not evil. Not dangerous. Just empty. Like she'd finally realized the fire she started had burned down her house. Not mine. She didn't say anything. She just stared. And then, she smiled. Not the fake one. Not the smug one. The kind of smile you give right before you throw a grenade. The hearing was set for 9 a.m. I hadn't seen her in over 3 months. Not since the grocery store parking lot. Not since that smile that told me she'd rather burn everything than lose control. But this wasn't her courtroom. Not this time. She walked in wearing white. Of course she did. Hair curled. Minimal makeup. A soft pink folder in her arms labeled custody rights. She sat across from me and looked right at the judge. Eyes glossy, voice shaking. He disappeared with my child. I thought my husband was healing. I didn't know he was planning to take my son away from me. She sniffled. I was a good wife. I forgave mistakes. But what he did, this was cruel. She held up a printed photo of the 3 of us. The one from that self-timer night. The last family photo we ever took. It was staged, like everything else she'd ever done. Then it was my turn. I stood up, calm, prepared. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't point fingers. I just said this. Your Honor, I didn't kidnap anyone. I left to protect my son from a house built on lies. I have proof she knowingly deceived me about paternity and carried out a calculated act of revenge using a child that wasn't mine. The courtroom fell still. I handed over the USB. The judge reviewed it privately. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. No one said a word. When he came back into the room, his face was unreadable, professional, but tense. He looked at her, then back at me. I've reviewed the files, including messages confirming the intent behind the deception. He looked at her again. You created this child with another man and concealed the truth for the purpose of retaliation. That is not only unethical, it borders on psychological abuse. Her jaw dropped. She stood, tried to speak. But, Your Honor, he cheated first. I forgave him. The judge raised his hand. What you did was not forgiveness. It was long-term manipulation disguised as motherhood. He granted me sole temporary custody, ordered a full investigation into her mental fitness as a parent, froze her attempt to file for support. Her revenge story had collapsed, under the weight of her own words. Outside the courtroom, she followed me. Tears finally real, hands shaking. Ethan, please, don't take him from me. I looked at her, not with hate, not even anger, just finality. You already did that the moment you made him a weapon. A month passed after the hearing. She didn't show up to the court-ordered psych evaluation, didn't respond to follow-up letters, didn't fight the custody ruling. She just vanished. The same way I had. Only her disappearance wasn't strategic. It was collapse. I still had nightmares. Of the hospital. Of the moment the doctor said the blood types didn't match. Of rocking a child I believed was mine, while she was texting another man about how clueless I was. But then I'd wake up and see my son curled up beside me, breathing softly, safe. And I remembered why I did it. Why I'd do it all over again. One day I got a package. No name. No return address. Inside, a single photo. Her. Sitting on a bench outside the house we used to live in. Wearing the hoodie I once left on our bedroom chair. On the back of the photo, in messy black ink, it said, "You won. I lost. But he'll always be part of me." I didn't react. Didn't tell my lawyer. Didn't even keep the photo. I burned it. Because I realized something that day. She never wanted to raise that child. She wanted to raise a consequence. 6 months later, I finalized the paperwork. Full custody. New birth certificate. New last name. No trace of her anywhere. I left the country. New passport. New job. New language. And with me, a son who would grow up never knowing what she turned him into. Never hearing her say, "You were a mistake, but at least you helped me hurt him." I never replied to her last text. Never checked if she was okay. Because the truth is, she was never okay. She was just convincing. And I had spent enough of my life loving an actress with no soul. So I left behind everything. Except one thing. A small envelope. Mailed to her last known address. No note. No name. Inside, a flash drive. The same one I left on the kitchen counter the night I vanished. But with one new file. A voice message. 20 seconds long. "You wanted to destroy my life. And you did. But I built something stronger in the ashes. Goodbye." And that was it. No drama. No fire. Just quiet. The same quiet she left me in the day I held a child that wasn't mine. And smiled through it. She thought she broke me. But all she did was set me free. What would you do if this happened to you? I want to hear your thoughts.